your local election headquarters. This is Taking Trenton, the 2025 New Jersey Democratic Governors Forum.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Mannarino here with this special PIX-11 political presentation. For the past 8 years, New Jersey has been blue, led by Democratic Governor Phil Murphy, right? But remember, he only narrowly won a second term in 2021. Since then, the state of New Jersey has trended more to the right, as evidenced by the presidential election, where President Donald Trump came 10 percentage points closer to winning than he did in 2020. The result, the closest finish for a Republican presidential candidate in New Jersey since 1992. Now, let me say this. We had hoped to been able to bring you conversations with the Republicans running for governor. In the end, we were unable to get the top two candidates to make time for us. But tonight, you will hear from all 6 Democrats who are running. So here's what our latest PIX-11 Emerson College The Hill poll shows about the state of the race. Here they all are, right? In the lead, Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, followed by a tight bunch: Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop, Newark Mayor Ross Baraka, Congressman Josh Gottheimer, and NJEA President Sean Spiller. And behind them is former State Senate President Steve Sweeney. Now, I spoke with each of them this week of May 19th in New Jersey. First up tonight is Steve Sweeney, the former longtime president of the New Jersey Senate, who is a union iron worker by trade, is the only South Jersey candidate in the race. Now, I met with Mr. Sweeney at a diner in Ewing Township, just one community over from Trenton, to hear his plan for running the Garden State. Mr. Sweeney, great to have you here.
Thrilled to be here.
Let me begin with this important topic of affordability and what we're facing here in New Jersey, right? At the end of your 4-year term, let me ask you point blank, would property taxes be lower?
I would hope they wouldn't be higher. That's where I would go for. Realize the state government doesn't do property taxes. Property taxes are done at the local level. We send 76 cents of every dollar back to local governments. But anyone that thinks we're going to reduce costs if we're going to continue to deliver services the way we do, they're crazy. You know, I put a 2% property tax cap in place in 2011. Our average property tax is over $10,000 now. It would have been 15. So, but the point is, you got to do differently. You have to do government differently to bring costs down.
But you're saying you wouldn't want them to be higher. Can you guarantee that they wouldn't be, since you're also saying in the same breath that they're handled at the local level?
Well, because that's where they're handled. The state doesn't do property taxes. That's the mistake. The state gives rebates to reduce property taxes. But if we don't deliver government differently, I'm not passing the buck. I'm identifying where the problem exists. Mm-hmm. Gloucester County has more shared services than any county in the state. And I was the freeholder director at the time we were doing it. We would give the towns the shared service, like ambulance. You don't have to pay for it anymore. The county is. And we still couldn't get the towns to do it. It took time. We're the only countywide ambulance system. Well, Monmouth said they just started.
Okay.
And we were giving it away. So the point is, we have to deliver governmentally differently if you want to reduce costs.
So let me ask you this, right? Because the majority of the property tax bill goes to school districts and then municipalities, right? So when you break the numbers down, there's 590 school districts, but 564 municipalities. So let me phrase this in 2 ways. Would you mandate a consolidation of school districts? And if you do, what does that number look like if it's currently at 590?
I would start with the easiest way to do it is eliminate the pre-K to 2s, pre-K to 4, pre-K to 6, pre-K to 8. They are sending districts to a regional high school. You make the regional high school a pre-K to 12. You wipe out all that administrative costs. And more importantly, what we found out when we were studying this is the school districts that are sending to the high school, the 5 different or 4 different districts, they don't teach the same curriculum.
So you want to have pre-K and high school in the same school?
No. School district.
Okay.
Right? You're still going to have your same buildings, but you're not going to have a superintendent at a pre-K to 2 or pre-K to 4. You're not going to have HR directors. You're going to have purchasing. You're going to have everything done under the high school. And this way, you buy all the same history books. You buy all the same math books for grade appropriate. You know what I mean? And now the kids are learning the same, and now you're buying on a larger bulk, and you reduce costs. We have the most inefficient government you could possibly have.
So if it was at 590 and you take that plan, you consolidate, do you have a number?
I haven't studied all. I know there's a lot of them. We haven't added them up. But that's what I'm saying. That's the start. You have a lot of school districts that are very... my former legislative district, I have a school in Mannington. It goes to 8th grade. They graduate 13 kids a year. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Are there too many municipalities? Would you consider, this is taboo, would you consider consolidating municipalities?
Hey, listen, it happened in Princeton and Princeton Borough. You know, that's the challenge. I'm looking more at shared services and consolidations, like where towns share trash collection, where they basic services where you can bring down cost. You know, that's what I would look to do, and I've done it. And look, I've actually merged police departments in Gloucester County. We had probably half a dozen police departments that were merged. Small departments merged into larger departments to make it more affordable.
So not a mandate?
Not with towns, but I would start getting, honestly, not rewarding towns if they're not sharing services. I had a bill that actually said we'll start to take funding away from towns that aren't willing to be more efficient, because why am I going to help you be less efficient?
Let me talk about this big June 30th deadline for municipalities to present affordable housing plans to the state. As part of the Mount Laurel decision, I know you're well versed in this doctrine that mandates communities contribute their fair share of affordable homes. But it hasn't happened, right? So would you sue municipalities if you don't feel they're contributing to that market?
I would do a couple things. One, I would reward the towns that are doing it with additional transportation dollars. So a good actor gets rewarded, a bad actor. If you don't use your affordable housing funds there for 4 years, the governor can actually take the funding. The state could actually identify land and build the housing themselves.
So you take the money back?
Yeah.
Not sue them?
No, you don't have to. I'll take their money. But what I would rather than do is do what's right, because it's been 50 years that the Supreme Court ordered you need to build housing. And their arguments have been the same argument all along. So if you're not going to use your money to build, plus the state's got about $120 million in the bank right now, start spending it.
Okay. Let me talk about the other big issue right now, and that is just transportation within New Jersey, right? We're coming off the first transit strike since 1983. Glad the trains are up and running again. But as governor, how do you ensure that the needed infrastructure improvements along NJ Transit are actually made so that the trains can keep running on time?
Number one, dedicate the funding. We just gave transit $1 billion, and they didn't dedicate it. I know how the state budget works. If that funding's not dedicated, within 3 years, that $1 billion will be in the budget. There won't be a transit.
Do you feel like their funding wasn't there already, currently?
It was never enough funding. We were pushing for years to get more funding. You know, at one time, probably before you were born, New Jersey was actually the envy of the country with mass transit. But what it came down to is, from Christie Women on forward, they didn't fund it. So you have old equipment, you know what I mean? You weren't funding things properly. Things break when you don't take care of them.
Would you keep Chris Calorian as New Jersey Transit president?
I would plead for him to stay. He's a true transportation person. That's what we need. You put people in there as a political appointments. Like the previous CEO was a maritime engineer. Mm-hmm. Buses don't run on the water, and neither do trains.
Yeah. So that's what's happening with the trains and buses, but then there's this whole other situation at Newark Airport. And I just spoke with Senator Andy Kim. He toured both Newark Airport and he toured Philadelphia, where some of these things were moved, right? He says the earliest that Newark could get additional air traffic controllers is 18 to 24 months. That's at the earliest. So it underscores really how hard it is to surge resources to Newark Airport. What could you do right now, if you were governor, to make flyers feel safe at Newark Airport?
Honestly, it's a federal role in this one. You know, Senator Kim, our Congress delegation, you know, I heard they, like in our last debate, they said, well, we sent letters to the transportation. Yeah. You need to bring these guys into hearings and demand answers and get things up.
That's long term. I'm saying right now.
There's nothing, it's not a state role, it's a federal role.
Yeah.
It's not passing the buck. That's where it's at. But it's not okay to be just saying, I'll write a letter and I'm going to complain. You got to hold hearings on this. You got to push this stuff.
So you're saying as a governor, really it's a long-term plan because you cannot do something besides
complain to your federal delegation because the federal government's failing.
Would you fly out of Newark right now?
Yeah, I'd fly out of Newark. I've been in that tower, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. I watch these people. They're very dedicated. They're hardworking people. There's not enough of them. And who do we blame for that? Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
Let me ask you about kind of the state of politics right now. Governor Murphy likes to play up big progressive accomplishments in his 8 years, like legalizing marijuana, paid family leave, raising the minimum wage. But more and more, we're seeing support for the Republican Party within the state of New Jersey. We saw it in the last gubernatorial race. We saw it in the last presidential race, right? Has Governor Murphy, as he comes to an end now, put you in a better or worse position to win as a Democrat?
Listen, this is not Governor Murphy's fault. And all those things you talked about, I passed. I was prime sponsor. He did not put us in a bad place. The National Party has put Democrats in a bad place because it's the economy, stupid. We're not talking about the economy. 200 years from now, it'll be the economy. We, the Democrats, have to start talking to the middle-class people again. My iron workers that aren't voting Democrat, but voted their whole life Democrat because they're so fed up because they're not hearing what the plans are to make sure I got a job where I can pay for my mortgage, that I can take care of my kids. You know what I'm saying?
But it didn't resonate in the last gubernatorial election as much as Democrats would have wanted. Yes, some Murphy won, but the gap really closed.
Because we're not talking about the economy. We need to focus on, listen, 2021 was all about Trump and abortion. You know something? And people want to know, what are you doing to make my life better here?
Speaking of politics, our recent polling found a majority of New Jerseyans, 53%, want the next governor to work with President Donald Trump. 47% say they want the governor to stand up to him. What will you do?
Where I can work with him, I will. Listen, I had Chris Christie for 8 years as I was Senate president. Christie's 20 times smarter than Trump, just so you know. And where we could find areas to work together, we did. And we fixed things. And where we couldn't agree, we fought.
So what is one thing you would stand up to President Trump on at this current moment, and one thing you'd be open to working with him on?
Listen, I would be open to working with him on the economy. Absolutely working with the economy. There's just so many things I'd stand up to Trump on. DEI. My daughter is Down syndrome. The I is inclusion. So, pointing to DEI is a problem. But the way he's handling deporting people, breaking the law. Listen, I believe that if people are here and they've broken the law, they need to leave. If they came here as criminals, they need to leave. But there's a due process that he's violating.
When you mentioned the economy and working with him, how does that look like under an administration, a Sweeney administration?
Looking for ways to get things moving. Right now, New York just got their offshore wind going again because they worked a deal out with the administration. We need pipelines to bring energy costs down, and I did all the clean energy. I did every clean energy bill there is in New Jersey right now. But we need more energy, and right now we need to bring in more gas to bring the cost of energy down because it's going to skyrocket. New Jersey used to export energy. We were self-sufficient. Now we're relying on the PJM, and you know something? When you rely on someone else to control your costs, you're in trouble.
So do you feel like he would work with you on that?
Yeah, he just did it with New York.
Right, with the wind.
They just restarted the wind project because they agreed to do some pipelines.
You mentioned immigration status. Let me ask you a concluding question here. Should New Jersey be a sanctuary state?
No, I said this before. The bigger problem is we keep telling everyone that we have the immigrant trust doctrine, and that's going to protect everybody. It's not. The federal government is not following the rule of law right now. So telling people, giving false hope to people that we passed this law and they're safe when they're not isn't okay.
Okay, and we're going to have to leave it there because we're giving all the candidates equal time. So I appreciate your time, Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you.